The train whistle cut through the dry Montana air like a blade, announcing its arrival at Red Bluff Station with a shriek that made every soul within earshot look up from their work. And among those who turned their heads was Ryder Morrison, a 24-year-old baggage handler who had spent the last 3 years loading and unloading trunks and crates without ever expecting his life to change on this sweltering August afternoon in 1883. The iron beast hissed to a stop, releasing clouds of white steam that rolled across the wooden platform like morning fog. Ryder wiped the sweat from his forehead with his dusty sleeve and approached the passenger cars, ready for another routine day of hauling luggage. The first few passengers descended with the usual fanfare, wealthy ranchers and traveling merchants who barely acknowledged his existence as he collected their belongings. Then she appeared. A young woman stepped down from the third car, moving slowly, carefully, as though each movement required deliberate thought. She could not have been more than 21 years old, with auburn hair pulled back in a simple bun that had come loose during the long journey. Her dress, once probably quite fine, showed signs of hard travel and wear. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her face held the kind of exhaustion that went deeper than mere physical fatigue. In her arms, wrapped in a faded blue blanket, was an infant who could not have been more than 3 months old. Ryder watched as she reached the platform and stood there, looking around with an expression that mingled hope with something close to desperation. She had no trunk beside her, no carpet bag, nothing but the bundle in her arms and a small cloth bag hanging from her shoulder. The conductor stepped down behind her and called out impatiently for passengers to clear the way. The woman moved aside, still searching the crowd with growing anxiety. Minutes passed. Other passengers were greeted by family or headed toward the hotel. The platform began to empty. Still she stood there, swaying slightly, shifting the baby's weight in her arms. Ryder finished loading a set of trunks onto a wagon and found himself drawn back to where she stood. Up close, he could see her hands trembling, could see the way she bit her lower lip as though fighting back tears. The baby began to fuss, a thin, wailing sound that made several passers-by turn their heads in irritation before moving on. "Madam." Ryder removed his hat, suddenly aware of how dusty and rough he must look. "Are you waiting for someone?" She startled at his voice, then turned to face him. Her eyes were a striking shade of green, though reddened from what might have been days of crying. Yes, I thought." Her voice broke. She took a breath and tried again. "My husband's brother was supposed to meet me here. Thomas Peterson. Do you know him?" Ryder's heart sank. He knew the name all too well. Thomas Peterson had worked at the mill until about 6 weeks ago, when he had packed up his things in the dead of night and vanished, leaving behind unpaid debts and angry creditors. Nobody had seen him since. "Madam, I hate to tell you this, but Thomas Peterson left town more than a month ago. Nobody knows where he went." The color drained from her already pale face. The baby's crying intensified, and she looked down at the child with an expression of such profound despair that Ryder felt something crack inside his chest. "I see," she whispered. Then, more to herself than to him, of course he did. "Madam, if you don't mind my asking, how do you know Thomas?" She looked up at him, and he saw her fighting to maintain composure. "I'm Willa Peterson. My husband was James Peterson, Thomas's older brother. James died 4 months ago. Pneumonia. We were living in Chicago, but after he passed, I couldn't afford our rooms. I wrote to Thomas, and he wrote back saying I should come here, that he would help me get situated, find work." She laughed, a hollow sound. "I used the last of my money for the train ticket." The baby was screaming now, and Willa tried to bounce him gently, but her arms were shaking from exhaustion. Other people on the platform were staring now, some with pity, others with disapproval. Ryder made a decision in that moment that would alter the course of his life. "Madam, I know we just met, and I know this is going to sound strange, but I cannot in good conscience leave you standing here on this platform with nowhere to go." He hesitated, then pushed forward. "My name is Ryder Morrison. I work here at the station, and I have a small house about a mile outside of town. It is not much, but it has a roof that does not leak and a working stove. You and your baby can stay there until we figure out what to do next." Willa stared at him as though he had spoken in a foreign language. "I cannot possibly accept such an offer from a stranger." "I understand your hesitation, madam, truly I do, but look around. The sun will be setting in a few hours, and Red Bluff is not the kind of town that is welcoming to women on their own, especially with a baby. The boarding house will not let you stay without money up front. The church is 2 days' ride from here because this town is too small and too wild to have attracted a permanent preacher yet." He met her eyes. "I am not asking for anything in return. I am just offering a safe place to sleep and some food. You can make your decision about what to do next with a clear head and a full stomach." Tears began to spill down Willa's cheeks. "I do not even know you. You could be anyone. You are right. But I am asking you to trust me anyway, because I think you know as well as I do that you do not have many other options right now." The baby's cries had weakened to exhausted whimpers. Willa looked down at her son, then back at Ryder. He saw the moment she made her choice, saw resignation and hope war across her features before hope won by the slimmest of margins. "All right," she said quietly. "Thank you." Ryder reached out slowly, giving her time to pull back if she wanted. "May I carry him for you?" "You look ready to drop, madam." Fresh tears came, but she nodded and carefully transferred the baby into Ryder's arms. The infant was lighter than Ryder expected, a tiny warm bundle that immediately quieted at the change. Willa nearly sobbed with relief at having her arms free. "I can walk," she insisted, though her legs were visibly unsteady. "I know you can, but you do not have to prove anything to me." Ryder looked around and spotted his horse, a sturdy bay mare named Copper, tied near the station house. "We will take it slow. My horse can carry us all. It is not far." As they walked toward Copper, Ryder felt the weight of stares from townspeople who knew him. He ignored them. Let them talk. Mrs. Henderson, the postmaster's wife, looked positively scandalized. Old Joe from the saloon raised his eyebrows so high they nearly reached his hairline. Ryder kept his focus on getting Willa safely mounted on Copper, then handed the baby up to her before swinging up behind them. The ride to his house took 20 minutes at a slow walk. Willa sat stiffly in front of him, clearly uncomfortable with the nearness but too exhausted to protest. The baby had fallen asleep against her chest. Ryder kept his conversation minimal, sensing she needed quiet more than words. His house came into view as they crested a small rise. It was modest, a simple wooden structure with 2 rooms and a porch that he had built himself over the course of 2 summers. The land around it was dry this time of year, but he had a vegetable garden that struggled along with regular watering from the creek that ran about 50 yards to the east. Ryder dismounted first, then helped Willa down. She swayed on her feet and he steadied her with a hand on her elbow. "When did you last eat, madam?" She had to think about it. "Yesterday morning, I think. Maybe the morning before that, I am not certain." "Right. Let us get you inside and fed then. You can sleep in the bedroom. I will take the sofa." "I cannot take your bed," Willa protested weakly. "You can and you will. A woman who just traveled across half the country with a baby is not sleeping on a sofa in my house. End of discussion." He led her inside. The house was clean if sparse. The main room held a sofa he had purchased secondhand, a simple wooden table with 2 chairs, and a cast iron stove that he kept religiously maintained. A bookshelf against one wall held his small collection of books, mostly practical volumes on ranching and farming, but a few novels too. The bedroom beyond held a bed, a chest of drawers, and a washstand. Willa looked around as though she could not quite believe she was here. Ryder quickly moved to the bedroom and stripped the sheets, replacing them with clean ones from the chest. When he returned to the main room, Willa was standing exactly where he had left her, rocking the baby automatically though the child still slept. "Bedroom is ready. There is a basin and fresh water for washing. Why do you not rest while I make some food?" "I should help," Willa said automatically. "You should rest," Ryder countered gently. "Please, let me do this." She nodded finally and moved toward the bedroom. At the doorway, she turned back. "Mr. Morrison, why are you doing this?" Ryder considered the question. "My mother raised me on her own after my father was killed in a mining accident when I was 5 years old. I watched her struggle, watched people turn their backs on her because she was a woman alone. The few people who helped us without asking for anything in return, they saved our lives more than once. I swore that if I ever had the chance to be that person for someone else, I would take it." He met her eyes. "So I guess I am doing this because someone once did something similar for us." Willa's expression softened, and for the first time, she almost smiled. "Thank you," she whispered, then disappeared into the bedroom, closing the door softly behind her. Ryder stood in the quiet house for a moment, suddenly aware of what he had just done. He had brought a widow and her baby into his home, a woman he knew nothing about except that she was alone and desperate. It was reckless, possibly foolish. But as he moved to the stove and began preparing a simple meal of beans and cornbread, he found he had no regrets. The food was ready within the hour, but when he checked the bedroom, he found Willa fast asleep on top of the covers, still fully dressed, the baby curled safely in the crook of her arm. Both were so deeply asleep, they did not stir when he looked in. Ryder quietly set a plate of food on the dresser where she would find it when she woke, along with a glass of water, then retreated to the main room. He ate his own meal in thoughtful silence, then settled on the sofa with a book he had been slowly working through, a volume on modern farming techniques. But the words would not stick in his mind. He kept thinking about the woman in his bedroom, about the desperation in her eyes, and the way she had looked at him when he offered help, as though kindness was something she had forgotten existed. Night fell. Through the bedroom door, he could hear the baby wake and fuss briefly, heard Willa's soft voice soothing the child. The sounds felt strange in his usually solitary home, but not unpleasant. Eventually, the house fell silent again. Ryder stretched out on the sofa, which was not quite long enough for his frame but would do. He had slept in worse places. As he drifted off, he wondered what tomorrow would bring, wondered how long Willa would stay, wondered if he would be able to help her find a way forward. He did not yet know that he had just met the woman who would change everything he thought he knew about life and love. Did not know that the tired widow with the baby and no money was about to become the center of his entire world. All he knew was that helping her had felt like the most natural thing he had ever done, as inevitable as breathing. Morning came with the sound of the baby crying. Ryder woke instantly, years of ranch work having trained him to rise early. Gray light filtered through the windows. He sat up, running his hands through his hair, and heard movement from the bedroom. The door opened, and Willa emerged, looking only marginally more rested but at least steady on her feet. "I am so sorry," she said immediately. "I did not mean to sleep so long. And I took your bed and you gave me food and I have not even properly thanked you." "There is nothing to apologize for," Ryder said, standing. "You were exhausted. How is the baby?" Hungry, Willa said, and he could hear the worry in her voice. I need to feed him, but I... She trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. Ryder understood immediately. I need to see to my horse and check the garden. I will be outside for the next while. Take all the time you need. Relief flooded her face. Thank you. He grabbed his hat and headed out, giving her privacy. Copper was grazing near the house, and he led her to the small stable he had built, checking her hooves and giving her fresh water and feed. Then he moved to the garden, pulling weeds and checking the progress of the struggling tomatoes and squash plants. The sun was fully up when he heard the door open. Willa stepped onto the porch, the baby apparently satisfied and sleeping again in her arms. She had washed her face and tidied her hair, though her dress still showed the wear of hard travel. Mr. Morrison, she called. He walked over, brushing dirt from his hands. Please call me Ryder. Ryder, she repeated, testing the name. And you must call me Willa. I think we have moved beyond formalities, given that I slept in your bed last night. A faint blush colored her cheeks at the words, and he found himself fighting not to smile. Fair enough. Are you hungry? I can make breakfast. I ate the food you left last night when I woke up at some point. It was wonderful, but I can make breakfast now. I need to do something useful, or I will go mad. Ryder nodded and led her back inside. Together, they worked in the small kitchen area, a surprisingly comfortable dance of passing ingredients and sharing the limited space. Willa was clearly an experienced cook, moving with efficiency despite her unfamiliarity with his kitchen. She made scrambled eggs with wild onions he had gathered the previous week, and more cornbread to go with the coffee he brewed. They sat at the table, the baby in a nest of blankets on the sofa nearby. For a few minutes, they ate in silence. Then Willa set down her fork and looked at him directly. I need to be honest with you about my situation. It is worse than I made it sound yesterday. Ryder waited, letting her find her words. I have no money at all, not a single cent. I have this dress, one other dress in my bag, and 3 diapers for the baby that I have been washing and reusing. I have no family except Thomas, and apparently he wants nothing to do with me. I have no skills that would make me employable in a town like this. I was a clerk's wife in Chicago. I kept house and managed social obligations. None of that matters here. Her hands shook slightly. I do not know what I am going to do. What is your baby's name? Ryder asked. The question seemed to surprise her. William, after my father. We call him Will. That is a good, strong name. Ryder took a sip of his coffee, choosing his next words carefully. Here is what I propose. You and Will stay here as long as you need to. In exchange, if you are willing, you can help with cooking and keeping the house. It is work that needs doing anyway, and I am terrible at it. That way you are not accepting charity, but we are helping each other. Meanwhile, we can figure out what options you have for the future. I cannot simply live in your house, Willa said, shaking her head. People will talk. It will ruin your reputation. Let them talk. My reputation will survive. Besides, Red Bluff is not exactly high society. Half the people here have pasts they are running from. He leaned forward. Willa, I am not going to put you and your baby out on the street. That is not happening. So we can either fight about this, or you can accept the help you need and we can move forward. What do you say? She studied him for a long moment, and he could see her trying to figure out his angle, trying to determine what he really wanted from her. You truly want nothing in return. I want you to not starve or freeze or end up in a bad situation. That is what I want. Why? The word came out almost anguished. Why would you do this for a complete stranger? Because someone once did it for my mother and me, and because it is the right thing to do. He held her gaze. And maybe because I think that when you see someone drowning, you do not stop to ask their life story before you pull them out of the water. Tears welled in Willa's eyes again, but she blinked them back fiercely. "All right. But this is temporary, just until I can find another solution. I will not be a burden on you indefinitely." "Agreed," Ryder said, though something in his chest tightened at the thought of her leaving. He pushed the feeling aside. She had just lost her husband. She needed help, not complicated feelings from the man providing it. They fell into a routine over the next few days that felt startlingly natural. Ryder would leave early for his work at the station, returning around midday for a lunch that Willa had prepared, then going back until evening. He would come home to find the house cleaner than it had been in years, his clothes washed and mended, dinner ready or nearly so. In the evenings, they would talk, hesitant conversations at first that gradually grew more comfortable. Willa told him about Chicago, about the small apartment she and James had shared, about the creeping dread as her husband's illness worsened and the doctor bills mounted, about the awful finality of his death, the cold reality of being alone in a big city with a newborn and no money, about the desperate hope she had felt when Thomas's letter arrived, offering a lifeline. Ryder told her about growing up in Montana, about his mother's fierce determination to keep them afloat after his father died, about learning to work at 8 years old, about his mother's death from fever when he was 17, about the years since then spent working various jobs until he had saved enough to buy this small piece of land and build his house. "You want more than this?" Willa asked one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the distant mountains. Will was asleep in her arms, and the air had cooled to a pleasant temperature. "More than being a baggage handler, I mean. Not that there is anything wrong with it," she added quickly. "I do," Ryder admitted. "I want to build a real ranch, raise cattle or horses. I have been saving money slowly. In another few years, I might have enough to buy some decent livestock and really get started. This land I have now, it is not enough, but it is a start." "That sounds wonderful," Willa said softly. "James and I used to talk about having a house with a garden, maybe in the country outside Chicago. We never managed to save enough." She looked down at Will. "I thought we would have time. You always think you will have more time." Ryder wanted to reach over and take her hand but held himself back. "I am sorry you lost him." "So am I," she whispered. "But I am grateful he gave me Will, and I am grateful that you were working at that station the day I arrived. I do not want to think about what would have happened if you had not been there." "Someone else would have helped," Ryder said, though he was not entirely certain that was true. "Maybe, but it was you." She turned to look at him, and in the fading light her eyes were luminous. "You have been kinder to me than I had any right to expect. I will not forget that." The moment stretched between them, loaded with something neither was ready to name. Then Will stirred, and Willa looked away, and the spell broke. Inside, Ryder lay on the sofa that night and stared at the ceiling, admitting to himself what he had been trying to ignore for days. He was developing feelings for Willa. Real feelings, the kind that made his heart beat faster when she smiled, that made him look forward to coming home in a way he never had before. It was too soon, wildly inappropriate given her circumstances, and he knew he needed to keep it to himself. She was vulnerable, grieving, dependent on him. The last thing she needed was him complicating matters with romantic notions. But knowing he should not feel what he felt did nothing to stop the feelings themselves. 2 weeks passed. Willa began to smile more often, genuine smiles that lit up her entire face. Will grew stronger, more alert, his thin cries becoming more robust. The house took on a lived-in warmth it had never had before. Ryder found himself inventing excuses to come home early or to stay in the house longer in the mornings. Then Mrs. Henderson showed up. Ryder was at work when it happened, so he only heard about it later from Willa, whose hands shook with anger as she recounted the visit. She knocked on the door with two other women from town, Willa said, pacing the kitchen while Will slept nearby. They said they were concerned about my situation. They said it was not proper for me to be living here with you, that people were talking, that I was compromising your reputation and my own. They offered to help me find more appropriate accommodation, by which they meant I should go to Billings and try to find work there, or perhaps throw myself on the mercy of the church. When I explained that you were helping me until I could get on my feet, Mrs. Henderson actually laughed. She said men do not help women out of the kindness of their hearts, that there is always a price, and I should not be naive about what you would eventually expect from me. Rage flooded through Ryder, hot and immediate. She said that to you. She said much more than that. She said I was obviously a woman of questionable morals, or I would not have accepted such an arrangement. She said that if I had any decency, I would leave before I corrupted you further. Willa stopped pacing and turned to face him, her eyes blazing. Ryder, I am so sorry. I did not think about how this would look, how it might affect you. Maybe I should go. Maybe they are right. They are not right, Ryder said firmly. What you and I have is an arrangement between two adults. It is nobody's business but ours. You are staying, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. But your reputation. My reputation is my concern, not Mrs. Henderson's. He took a breath, forcing himself to calm down. Willa, do you feel unsafe here? Have I ever made you feel uncomfortable or pressured in any way? No, never. You have been nothing but respectful and kind. Then that is all that matters. You are not leaving unless you want to leave. Is that clear? She nodded slowly, and he saw relief in her expression. Thank you. I do not want to cause problems for you. You are not causing problems. Busybody townspeople with too much time on their hands are causing problems, and I will handle them. He did exactly that the next day. After work, he walked directly to the postmaster's house and knocked firmly on the door. Mrs. Henderson answered, looking surprised and then nervous when she saw his expression. Mr. Morrison, what a surprise. Mrs. Henderson, I understand you paid a visit to my home yesterday. She drew herself up. Someone needed to speak to that poor woman about the position she has put herself in. The position she has put herself in is safe and off the streets, which is where she would be if I had not offered help. Mrs. Peterson is a widow with a small baby and no family. I am providing her with a place to stay and food to eat. That is all. If you have a problem with that, you are welcome to explain to me what alternative you would have preferred. Should I have left her on the train platform? Should I have sent her to sleep in the stable? Please, enlighten me as to what the proper Christian response should have been. Mrs. Henderson's face flushed. It is not proper for an unmarried man and woman to live under the same roof. Then I suppose it is fortunate that we are both adults who can make our own decisions about propriety. What I will not tolerate is you or anyone else harassing Mrs. Peterson or making her feel unwelcome. She has been through enough without dealing with small-minded gossip. Do I make myself clear? Well, I never, Mrs. Henderson huffed. Consider this your only warning. Leave her alone. Ryder tipped his hat coldly and walked away, ignoring her sputtered protests. Word apparently spread, because over the next few days, Ryder received several visits from men in town, some genuinely concerned, others clearly sent by their wives to snoop. To each, he gave the same calm explanation and the same firm boundary. Willa was staying. They were not doing anything improper. Anyone who had a problem with it could direct their concerns to him, not to her. Most backed off. A few remained skeptical but kept their distance. And a surprising number were supportive, including old Joe from the saloon, who stopped by one evening with a basket of supplies. For the lady and the baby, he said gruffly. "My wife died 20 years back. I know what it is like to be alone. You are doing a good thing, boy. Do not let the hens convince you otherwise." The gesture touched both Ryder and Willa deeply. It was a reminder that even in a rough town like Red Bluff, there was still decency to be found. As summer faded into early fall, the days took on a rhythm that felt almost like contentment. Willa's health improved with regular meals and rest. Will grew visibly, his chubby fists grabbing at everything in reach. The house was always warm now, always smelled of cooking or fresh bread. Ryder found himself hurrying home each evening, his heart lifting when he crested the rise and saw lamplight in the windows. They talked for hours every night, conversations ranging from serious to silly. He learned that Willa loved to read but had not owned a book in years. He brought home every newspaper and magazine he could find at the station. She learned that he had taught himself to read from his mother's Bible and was largely self-educated. She began teaching him more refined grammar and vocabulary, gently correcting his rougher speech patterns. "You are smart," she told him one evening. "You should not hide it behind rough language." "I am a baggage handler," he pointed out. "Nobody expects me to speak like an educated man." "Maybe they should," Willa said. "You are worth more than hauling trunks for other people." Her words stayed with him, burrowing into his heart and taking root. One evening in late September, they were outside enjoying the cooler air when Willa asked the question he had been half expecting, half dreading. "Ryder, why have you never married?" He was quiet for a moment, watching the first stars emerge. "I suppose I never met anyone who made me want to. And the women in Red Bluff, the decent ones at least, they have better options than a baggage handler with a small patch of land and big dreams. The not-so-decent ones, well, I have no interest there." "You should not sell yourself short," Willa said softly. "You are a good man. Any woman would be lucky to have you." He turned to look at her. "What about you? Did you love James?" She was silent for so long he thought she might not answer. "Then I cared for him. He was kind to me and I was grateful for that. My father arranged the marriage when I was 18. James was 15 years older, established, respectable. I did not have much say in it, but I tried to be a good wife. When he got sick, I did everything I could to help him." "But love," she shook her head slowly. "I am not sure I knew him well enough to love him. We only had a year together and he worked long hours. We were more like friendly roommates than passionate spouses." "I am sorry," Ryder said, though he was not entirely sure what he was apologizing for. "Do not be. I am not saying this to make you feel bad. I am telling you because I think you should know that what I had with James was nothing like what I read about in novels or heard other women describe. And now, being here with you, I am beginning to understand what I missed." She looked up at him, and in the starlight her face was beautiful. "You have shown me more genuine care in these few months than I received in my entire marriage." Ryder's breath caught. "Willa, I know it is too soon," she said quickly. "I know I am still grieving, still vulnerable. I know all the reasons this is complicated, but I needed to say it. You deserve to know that your kindness has meant everything to me, that I think about you constantly, that when you come home each evening it is the best part of my day." His heart was pounding now. "It is the best part of mine, too." They stared at each other. Ryder wanted desperately to kiss her but held himself back. She was right. It was too soon. She needed more time. He needed to be patient, to let this unfold naturally rather than rushing something that could easily fall apart. "I should check on Will," Willa said finally, breaking the tension. "Of course." She stood and moved toward the door, then paused. "Ryder, thank you for being patient with me. I know this is not easy." "You are worth waiting for," he said simply. Her smile was radiant even in the darkness. The weeks that followed were almost painful in their sweetness. They moved around each other with a new awareness, every accidental touch charged with meaning. Willa would place her hand on his arm while talking, and electricity would shoot through him. He would help her carry something, and their fingers would brush, and he would see her breath catch. But he did not push, did not ask for more than she was ready to give. And slowly, so slowly, he saw her beginning to open up, beginning to let herself feel something beyond gratitude and friendship. October brought the first real cold, and Ryder spent his evenings chopping firewood to ensure they would be warm through the winter. Willa would sit on the porch with Will, watching him work, and sometimes he would catch her looking at him with an expression that made his pulse race. One evening, as he came inside sweating despite the cold, she stood and approached him with a towel. "You work too hard," she said, wiping his forehead with a tenderness that felt almost wifely. "I want you to be comfortable," he replied, looking down at her. She was so close he could smell the soap she used, could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. "I am comfortable," she whispered. "I am more than comfortable. I am happy. I have not been happy in so long I almost forgot what it felt like." "Willa," he said, his voice rough, "I need you to know something. My feelings for you, they go beyond friendship, beyond just wanting to help. I am falling for you, have been for weeks now, but I do not want to pressure you or make you feel obligated because you are living in my house." "You could never make me feel obligated," she said, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "And your feelings are not one-sided. I am falling for you too, Ryder. I think I started falling that first day on the platform when you said you would carry us both. Nobody has ever offered to carry me before. I will always carry you," he promised. "You and Will both, for as long as you will let me. What if I wanted you to carry us forever?" The question was barely a whisper. His heart felt like it might burst from his chest. "Then I would consider myself the luckiest man alive." She reached up and cupped his face with one hand. "May I kiss you?" In answer, he leaned down and touched his lips to hers, gentle and questioning. She responded immediately, pressing closer, and the kiss deepened. It was sweet and desperate and full of all the longing they had both been holding back. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "I am not ready for more than this yet," Willa said quickly. "I need time, but I wanted you to know how I feel. I wanted you to know that I am yours if you will have me." "I will have you in whatever way you are willing to give yourself," Ryder said. "We have time, all the time you need." They stood there in the lamplight, holding each other, and Ryder felt a profound sense of rightness settle over him. This woman, this unexpected gift that had arrived on a train platform 4 months ago, was becoming the center of his world. And somehow, miraculously, she felt the same way. Winter came, and with it, a new intimacy. Not physical, though they kissed often now, sweet stolen moments that left them both wanting more. But an intimacy of souls, of shared hopes and dreams and fears. They talked about everything. Ryder shared his plans for the ranch, and Willa offered ideas and suggestions that were surprisingly practical. She had a head for numbers and organization that could be incredibly useful. "You should teach me," he said one evening. "Show me how to keep proper books, how to manage accounts." So she did, setting up a simple ledger system for his finances and teaching him how to track expenses and income. As they worked side by side at the table, their heads bent over papers, Ryder could imagine a future where this was their life, working together to build something meaningful. Will took his first real smile in November, and Willa cried with joy. Ryder found himself feeling almost paternal toward the baby, this child who was not his by blood but who he had helped care for since he was barely 3 months old. He would hold Will in the evenings, walking him around the room when the baby was fussy, and feel a fierce protective love that surprised him with its intensity. "You are good with him," Willa observed one night, watching them together. "He is a good baby. James never held him like that. He was always worried he would drop him or do something wrong." She smiled sadly. "You are more of a father to him than James ever had the chance to be." Ryder looked down at Will, who had fallen asleep against his chest. "I would like to be if you would let me. I know I am not his real father, but I could be someone who cares for him, who helps raise him. If you want that." "I want that," Willa said, and her voice was thick with emotion. "I want that very much." December brought snow, blanketing the land in white and making travel difficult. Ryder was grateful for the firewood he had stockpiled. They spent long evenings by the fire, Willa reading aloud from the books he owned while he whittled or repaired tools. It was domestic and peaceful, and everything he had never known he wanted. On Christmas Eve, Ryder gave Willa a gift he had been working on for weeks, a small wooden box he had carved and lined with fabric. Inside was every penny he had saved over the past 4 months, money that should have been going toward his ranch dream. "I cannot accept this," Willa said immediately, trying to hand it back. "You can and you will. You need your own money, Willa, your own security. This is not charity, it is payment for all the work you have been doing, cooking and cleaning and keeping house. You have earned it." She looked at the money, then at him, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "You are going to make me cry on Christmas." "I will consider that a success then," he teased gently. She gave him a gift too, a shirt she had sewn from fabric she had carefully saved money to purchase from the mercantile. It fit perfectly, and he wore it immediately, touched by the hours of work she must have put into it. That night, after Will was asleep, they sat by the fire and Willa moved closer to Ryder on the sofa until she was tucked against his side, his arm around her shoulders. "I am ready," she said quietly. "Ready for what? For more. For us to be truly together." She looked up at him. "I know we are not married, and I know that is scandalous, but I love you, Ryder. I am in love with you, and I do not want to wait any more." His heart was racing. "Are you certain? I do not want you to feel rushed." "I am certain. It has been 8 months since James died. I have had time to grieve, time to heal. And I know what I want now. I want you. I want us to be a real family." Ryder cupped her face in his hands. "I love you too. I have loved you for months now, and I want nothing more than to make you mine in every way. But Willa, I think we should do this right. I think we should get married first." She blinked in surprise. "Are you proposing?" "I am. I know I should probably wait and do this more romantically, get you a ring, but I cannot hold back any more. Willa Peterson, will you marry me? Will you let me be your husband and Will's father? Will you build a life with me?" "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, of course, yes. I want nothing more." They kissed then, deep and passionate, and Ryder felt like his entire world had suddenly clicked into perfect focus. This was what he had been waiting for his entire life. This woman, this moment, this feeling of absolute rightness. They were married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the courthouse in Billings, a 2-day trip that they made with Will bundled against the cold. Ryder bought Willa a simple gold band, all he could afford, and she cried when he slipped it onto her finger. "It is perfect," she insisted. "You are perfect." They spent their wedding night in a boarding house room in Billings. Their first night truly alone together, since Will slept in a separate room with the landlady's daughter, who Willa had paid to watch him. Ryder was gentle and patient, and Willa was eager and loving, and when they finally came together it felt like a sacred thing, a joining of not just bodies but souls. "I love you," she whispered in the darkness afterward, curled against his chest. "I love you too," he replied, kissing her hair. Always. They returned to Red Bluff as husband and wife, and if anyone in town had opinions about the speed of their courtship, they kept them mostly to themselves. Mrs. Henderson sniffed disapprovingly when she saw them together, but even she could not deny that Willa seemed happy and well cared for. Life settled into a new pattern. Willa was officially Mrs. Morrison now, and she took pride in the title. She threw herself into making their house a real home, using some of the money Ryder had given her to purchase fabric for new curtains, dishes to replace his mismatched collection, a proper cradle for Will. Ryder continued working at the station, but began taking on additional jobs in the evenings and on weekends, anything to bring in extra money. He was more motivated than ever now that he had a family to provide for. The ranch dream was still there, but it had evolved. Now he imagined not just cattle and land, but Willa beside him, children running through fields, a legacy to build together. Spring came, and with it new possibilities. Ryder learned that the station master was planning to retire and was looking for someone to take over his position. It would mean better pay and more responsibility. He applied and, to his surprise and delight, was offered the job. "It is more money," he told Willa excitedly when he came home with the news. "Not a fortune, but enough that we could start seriously saving for land. We could have that ranch within a few years instead of a decade." Willa threw her arms around him. "I am so proud of you. You deserve this." He started the new position in April, and the extra income made an immediate difference. They were able to save more than half his wages each month. Willa kept the books meticulously, tracking every penny with the same fierce determination she brought to everything else. Will celebrated his first birthday in May, a chubby, happy baby who was just beginning to pull himself up on furniture. Ryder had built him a small wooden horse that rocked back and forth, and Will was obsessed with it. Watching the child play, seeing Willa laugh at his antics, Ryder felt a contentment so deep it almost frightened him. Surely nothing this good could last, but it did last. Month after month, their life together grew richer and more secure. They talked about the future constantly, planning the ranch they would build, discussing what kind of cattle to raise, where the best grazing land might be found. In August, Willa came to him with news that made his heart nearly stop with joy. "I am pregnant," she said, her eyes shining. "We are going to have a baby." Ryder picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing. "A baby, our baby. Are you happy?" She asked, though his reaction had already made the answer clear. "Happy does not even begin to cover it. I am ecstatic, thrilled, terrified," he admitted. "Me too, all of those things." She kissed him softly, "But mostly happy. I never thought I would have this, Ryder. A husband I love, a home, more children. You have given me everything I thought I lost forever." "You have given me everything I never knew I needed," he replied. "Everything I am, everything I have, it is yours." The pregnancy was smooth, and Willa bloomed with health and happiness. She continued to manage the household and help Ryder with his work, though he insisted she take things easier as she grew larger. Will was walking now, a toddler with his mother's green eyes and an infectious laugh. Ryder worked harder than ever, taking on every extra job he could find, building their savings. By Christmas, they had enough money saved to seriously look for land. He spent his free time riding around the area, investigating properties for sale, talking to ranchers about what to look for. In February, he found it. 160 acres about 5 miles from their current house, with a creek running through it, good grazing land, and a small cabin that needed work but was structurally sound. The price was reasonable because the previous owner had died and his children wanted to sell quickly. "This is it," he told Willa, his excitement barely contained as he described the property. "This is where we can build our ranch, our real home." She was 7 months pregnant now, moving more slowly but still sharp and engaged. "Can we afford it?" He showed her the numbers. It would take every penny they had saved plus a small loan from the bank, but they could do it. "What do you think?" "I think we should buy it," she said firmly. "I think this is what we have been working toward." They purchased the land in March, signing the papers with hands that shook with excitement and nerves. It was theirs, 160 acres of possibility. The baby came in early April, a boy they named Robert James, honoring both of their fathers. The birth was long but uncomplicated, and when Ryder held his son for the first time, this tiny person who was his by blood, he wept openly. "He is beautiful," he said, looking at Willa, who was exhausted but glowing. "You are beautiful. I cannot believe you gave me this." "We gave this to each other," she corrected gently. "Everything we have, we built together." Will was fascinated by his new brother, wanting to constantly touch the baby's tiny hands and feet. At not quite 2 years old, he was old enough to understand that the family had grown and seemed delighted by the development. Ryder took a few days off work to help Willa recover, and in those days he felt like he was living in a dream. His wife, his 2 sons, his land, his home. It was more than he had ever imagined possible for himself, but he was not content to stop there. He wanted to give them more. Better. Over the spring and summer, he began the hard work of building the ranch. He purchased 10 head of cattle with a loan from the bank, using the 160 acres for grazing. He worked dawn to dusk, managing his duties at the station during the day and working the ranch before dawn and after the station closed. It was exhausting, but he could see their dream taking shape, could see the foundation of something that would provide for his family for years to come. Willa managed everything else, the house, the children, the accounts. She took on extra work too, sewing for other women in town, anything to bring in a little more money. They were partners in the truest sense, working in tandem toward shared goals. By the time Robert was 6 months old, the ranch was showing real promise. The cattle were healthy, and Ryder had begun planning to purchase more in the spring. The cabin on the property had been repaired and expanded, and they made plans to move there permanently once Robert was a bit older and the house was truly ready. Life was not without challenges. Money was tight, and there were months when they worried about making the loan payments. Ryder had an injury in November when a steer kicked him, breaking 2 ribs and putting him out of commission for several weeks. Willa took over some of his duties at the ranch while caring for 2 small children, and he fell even more in love with her watching her quiet strength. But they got through it together. They always did. Winter was mild that year, and by the time spring rolled around again, they were ready to make the move to the ranch property. It took several trips to transport all their belongings, and Ryder felt a pang of nostalgia as they closed the door on the small house where they had first built their life together. "We will keep it," Willa said, sensing his feelings. "We can rent it out or use it for hired hands once the ranch gets bigger, but we do not have to say goodbye to it forever." The new house was bigger, with 3 proper bedrooms and a main room large enough for a full table and sitting area. Willa immediately set about making it a home, hanging her curtains, arranging furniture, planting a garden near the kitchen door. Will, now almost 3, loved the ranch. He followed Ryder everywhere, fascinated by the cattle and horses, already showing signs that he would be a natural rancher. Robert was a quieter baby than Will had been, content to watch the world from his mother's arms or his cradle with solemn dark eyes. Ryder hired a young man named Tom to help with the ranch work, which freed him up to focus more on the breeding program and long-term planning. With Tom handling the daily chores, Ryder could dedicate more time to the station work that still brought in their most reliable income. The ranch grew. In 2 years, they had 30 head of cattle. In 3 years, 50. Ryder purchased 2 good breeding bulls and several horses. Willa turned out to have a gift for training horses, working with them in the early mornings while the children still slept, and they began selling well-trained mounts to local ranchers and the cavalry at Fort Benton. In the spring of 1889, 5.5 years after Willa had arrived on that train platform, they celebrated paying off the bank loan. The land was fully theirs, clear and free. They marked the occasion with a small party, inviting the few families they had grown close to over the years. Old Joe came, still gruff but visibly moved by their success. "I knew you had it in you, boy," he told Ryder. "Both of you, you have built something real here." That night, after the guests had gone and the children were asleep, Ryder and Willa sat on their porch, looking out over their land in the moonlight. "Do you ever think about that day at the station?" Willa asked. "How different things could have been if you had not been working that day?" "I think about it often," Ryder admitted. "I think about how close I came to never meeting you." "I was so scared," she said softly, "so completely terrified and lost. And then you appeared and offered to carry us both. I did not believe people like you existed. I was just doing what anyone should have done. But nobody else did, only you." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You saved my life that day, Ryder, mine and Will's both. Everything we have now, everything we built, it started because you chose to be kind to a stranger." He kissed the top of her head. "You gave my life meaning. Before you, I was just going through motions, working and saving and not really knowing what it was all for. You and the boys, you are what it was for. You are my everything." They sat in comfortable silence, and Ryder reflected on the journey that had brought them here. 5.5 years ago, he had been a simple baggage handler with modest dreams. Now he was a husband, a father, a rancher. He had a partner who was his equal in every way, children he loved with his entire being, land that belonged to them, a future bright with possibility. "I want more children," Willa said suddenly, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "If you do, I think this family could handle a few more." "I would love more children," Ryder agreed. "As many as you want to give me." "Well then," she said, standing and taking his hand, "perhaps we should start working on that." He laughed and let her lead him inside into their bedroom, into the life they had built together. 2 more children came in the following years. A daughter, Emily, born in 1890 with her mother's auburn hair, and another son, Samuel, born in 1892, completing their family of 6. The ranch continued to thrive. By 1895, they had over 100 head of cattle and 20 horses. They had built a proper barn, expanded the house again, hired 3 permanent ranch hands. Will, now 12, worked alongside Ryder with the dedication and skill of someone much older. Robert, at 10, showed more interest in the business side, often sitting with his mother as she managed accounts and planned purchases. Willa had blossomed in ways Ryder never could have predicted. The frightened, exhausted widow from the train platform was now a confident, capable woman who could manage a ranch, train horses, raise 4 children, and still find time to read novels by lamplight. She was respected in town, known for her fair dealing and sharp mind. She had become friends with many of the women who had once whispered about her, proving through sheer competence and kindness that she belonged. Ryder had become someone too, had stepped into the role of rancher and community leader without even fully realizing it. He served on the town council now, had been elected twice. People came to him for advice on livestock and land management. He had earned the respect of men who once would have dismissed him as just a baggage handler. But for all their external success, what Ryder treasured most were the quiet moments. Will learning to read by the fire while Emily played with her dolls. Robert helping his mother with the account books, his tongue poking out in concentration. Samuel tottering around on chubby toddler legs, getting into everything. Willa laughing at something one of the children said, her eyes meeting Ryder's across the room with a warmth that still made his heart skip. On their 10th wedding anniversary in January of 1894, Ryder gave Willa a new ring, a delicate band with a small emerald that matched her eyes. It had taken him 6 months of saving to afford it, but the look on her face when she opened the small box made it worth every penny. "You did not have to do this," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I wanted to. The ring I gave you when we married, it was all I could afford then, but it never felt like enough. I wanted to give you something that showed how much you mean to me." "The first ring was perfect because it represented us at the beginning of our journey," Willa said, slipping the new ring onto her finger alongside the original band. "And this one is perfect because it represents us now, after everything we have built together. I will wear them both always." That night, after the children were asleep, they made love with the tender familiarity of a couple who knew each other's bodies as well as their own, who could communicate with a touch or a look. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Ryder felt a profound gratitude for the strange twists of fate that had brought them together. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Taking a chance on me, you could have gone to Billings, found some other life." "Never," Willa said firmly. "Not for a single moment. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Ryder Morrison. You and our family and this life we built. I would not change anything." The years continued to pass, bringing changes and growth. Will fell in love at 17 with a rancher's daughter from a neighboring property, a sweet girl named Sarah who fit into their family like she had always belonged. They married when Will was 20 in 1897 and within a year gave Ryder and Willa their first grandchild, a girl they named Willa in honor of her grandmother. "A grandmother at 37, Willa marveled, holding the baby girl. "I never imagined this." "You are the most beautiful grandmother I have ever seen," Ryder assured her, and meant it. She was 40 now, with some silver threading through her auburn hair, but to him she was as lovely as the day he first saw her on that train platform. Robert went off to school in Denver to study business, planning to return and help expand the ranch operations. Emily was showing early signs of being a gifted artist, filling notebooks with sketches of the ranch and the mountains. Samuel, always the wild one, was only interested in riding and roping, convinced he would be the best cowboy in Montana. Ryder was 52 now, his body showing the wear of years of hard labor, but still strong and vital. He and Willa still managed the ranch together, still made all major decisions as partners, still fell into bed together at night exhausted but content. In 1900, as a new century dawned, they threw a party celebrating the ranch's 15th anniversary. Friends and family came from all over, including some people Ryder had not seen in years. Old Joe had passed away the previous winter, but his son came to represent the family, bringing a bottle of whiskey that Joe had apparently set aside years ago for this occasion. Mrs. Henderson even showed up, elderly now and much softer in her manner. She approached Willa with something like humility. "I owe you an apology," she said. "I was wrong about you, about both of you. You have built something admirable here, and I am sorry for the things I said all those years ago." Willa accepted the apology with grace. "Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know." As the party wound down and the sun began to set, Ryder stood on his porch looking out over his land, Willa beside him. Will and Sarah were playing with their daughter in the yard. Robert had just returned from Denver for the summer and was talking animatedly with Tom about new business ideas. Emily and Samuel were laughing about something, their voices carrying on the evening air. "We did it," Willa said softly. "We actually did it. We built a good life, raised good children, created something that will last beyond us." "We did," Ryder agreed. "And it started because you stepped off a train with a baby in your arms and nothing to your name except courage. And because you looked at a complete stranger and said you would carry us both," Willa added. "That is where it really started, with your compassion and your willingness to help someone in need." Ryder pulled her close, marveling at how perfectly she still fit against him after all these years. "I love you. I have loved you since almost the moment I met you, and I will love you until my dying breath." "And I love you," Willa replied. "You took me in when I had nowhere to go, gave me a home when I was homeless, loved me when I was broken. You are the best man I have ever known, Ryder Morrison. And I thank God every day that you were working at that station the day I arrived." They kissed as the sun set over their land, over the life they had built together from nothing but determination and love. The journey from that August afternoon in 1883 to this moment had been long and sometimes difficult, but every struggle had been worth it for the family and future they had created. In the years that followed, the ranch continued to prosper. Will took over more of the daily management as Ryder aged, eventually becoming the primary operator, though he always consulted his parents on major decisions. Robert returned from Denver and expanded their operations to include sheep as well as cattle, diversifying their income streams. Emily married a photographer who had moved to Red Bluff and opened a studio where she helped him while pursuing her own artistic endeavors. Samuel became the finest horseman in the county, winning competitions and earning a reputation that brought buyers from across the territory. More grandchildren came, filling the ranch with noise and laughter. Ryder and Willa settled into the role of grandparents with joy, spoiling the children in the way grandparents are meant to, passing on stories and skills and values. On a warm evening in the summer of 1910, 27 years after that first meeting on the train platform, Ryder and Willa sat together in rocking chairs on their porch. They were older now, Ryder 71 and Willa 60. His hair was white, his face lined with years of weather and work. She moved more slowly than she once had, her hands sometimes stiff with arthritis. But their love had not diminished with time. If anything, it had deepened, grown richer and more profound. "You remember what you said to me that first day?" Willa asked, reaching over to take his hand. "After I told you I had no money and nowhere to go, I said I would carry you," Ryder replied, his memory still sharp for that life-changing moment. "I said I would carry you both. And you did. For 27 years, through everything, you carried us. You gave us everything." Her voice was thick with emotion. "I was so lost, Ryder, so completely without hope, and you appeared like an answer to a prayer I did not even know how to pray." "You carried me too," Ryder said, squeezing her hand gently. "You gave me a purpose, a family, a reason to build something that mattered. Everything good in my life came from you." Will came out onto the porch then, his own hair starting to show gray though he was only 30. "Ma, Pa, we are about to serve dinner. You two coming in a minute," Willa said, smiling at their son. Their first child, the baby she had clutched to her chest on that train platform, now a father of 4 himself. "We will be right there." Will nodded and headed back inside. Through the window, they could see the family gathering, 3 generations laughing and talking, the house full of life and love. "Not bad for a baggage handler and a widow with no money," Ryder observed, a smile playing at his lips. "Not bad at all," Willa agreed. "In fact, I would say it is pretty close to perfect." They sat there a moment longer, hands clasped, watching the last light fade from the sky. Then, as they had done thousands of times before, They stood together and walked into their house, into the warmth and noise of their family, into the beautiful life they had built from a single moment of kindness on a train platform long ago. The promise Ryder had made that day to carry Willa and her baby had been kept and expanded beyond anything either could have imagined. He had carried them through poverty and fear into prosperity and security. She had carried him from loneliness into love and family. Together, they had carried each other through decades of life, building not just a ranch but a legacy of compassion, hard work, and devotion that would extend through generations. And as they sat down to dinner surrounded by children and grandchildren, the table groaning with food from the land they owned, Ryder caught Willa's eye across the crowded room. She smiled at him, that same smile that had first captured his heart 27 years ago, and he knew with absolute certainty that every moment, every struggle, every triumph had been worth it. They had built a life, together. And it was good. The years continued to be kind to them. They grew older, yes, but they grew older together, which was all that mattered. They watched their children continue to thrive and their grandchildren grow. They saw the ranch expand even further under Will's management, becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. Then the state, after Montana gained statehood, through it all, Ryder and Willa remained partners, best friends, lovers. On their 30th anniversary, surrounded by family, Ryder stood and raised his glass. 30 years ago, I married the woman who stepped off a train into my life and changed everything. She was a widow with a baby and no money, scared and alone. I was a baggage handler with a small house and a big dream. Together, we built something neither of us could have managed alone. Willa, you are my heart, my partner, my everything. Here is to 30 more years. Willa stood and kissed him as everyone cheered. To the man who said he would carry me and who has never once put me down, I love you, Ryder Morrison, today and always. The party continued late into the night, but eventually they found themselves alone again on their porch, the stars bright overhead, the sounds of the ranch settling in for sleep all around them. It was a good day, Willa said contentedly. Every day with you is a good day, Ryder replied. She laughed and leaned against him. You old romantic. Always was, always will be, at least when it comes to you. They sat in comfortable silence, wrapped in the peace that comes from a life well lived and love well earned. The journey that had begun with an offer to carry a stranger and her baby had led to this, a sprawling family and a successful ranch and decades of companionship. It had not always been easy, but it had always been worth it. As they finally headed inside to their bed, Ryder reflected on the strange alchemy of fate that had brought them together. What if he had been sick that day and someone else had been working the station? What if he had not offered to help? What if she had refused his offer? So many small moments that could have gone differently, leading to entirely different lives, but they had not gone differently. He had been there. He had offered. She had accepted. And from that single choice, an entire universe of love and family and purpose had been born. Lying in bed that night, Willa's head on his shoulder, her breathing evening out as she drifted to sleep, Ryder sent up a silent prayer of gratitude. For the chance encounter that had brought them together. For Willa's willingness to trust a stranger. For the years they had been given to build a life together. For every moment, good and bad, that had led them to this place. He had promised to carry her, all those years ago on that dusty train platform, and he had kept that promise every day since. But the truth was, she had carried him too. Carried him to a place of meaning and purpose and deep, abiding joy that he had never imagined possible. Together, they had built not just a ranch but a legacy. Not just a family, but a future. And as Ryder finally drifted off to sleep, He did so with a smile on his face and contentment in his heart, knowing that every moment of his life had led him exactly where he was meant to be, with her. Always with her. The widow from the train who had become his wife, his partner, his forever. The woman he had promised to carry, and who had, in turn, carried him to heights he never dreamed possible. Their story, which had begun with such uncertainty and fear, had become something beautiful. A testament to the power of kindness, the strength of love, and the incredible things that can grow from a single moment of compassion. And they lived happily, surrounded by the family and life they had built together, until their final days, never regretting the choice they had made to trust each other all those years ago on a train platform in Red Bluff, Montana. Their love story became legend in the family, passed down through generations as an example of how the smallest acts of kindness can change everything, and how love, real love, is built not in grand gestures but in the daily choice to carry each other through whatever life brings.